Hey guys, Dr. Justin Marcagiani here in the house with Jeff Bookout, mold expert. We are excited to have Jeff on today's podcast. Jeff is a mold detective. He goes in, he does mold inspections in different homes. He has natural treatment protocols as well to assess mold. We've got a couple little audio issues starting off, so we're ready to rock on this one. Hey Jeff, how you doing today, man? What's cooking?
Doing fantastic, Doctor. How are you doing today?
Hey, doing excellent. Really excited to chat with you. So we talked about it earlier, but just kind of give the listeners a little preview how you got into this space out of the gate here.
You bet. So I've been doing this for almost 20 years. So how I got into it is my youngest daughter was getting sick from mold exposure. Didn't know what was going on. It was 104-degree fevers every time we would go to certain areas, strep throat by 2 a.m. And back then it's, what's wrong with you? You know, I slept in the exact same place that you did, ate the same things that you ate. Why are you sick and I'm not? Because clearly at her young age, she was extremely ill. And back then didn't have the access to the information that we have today, but she has what's called HLA genetics. So HLA, liver not producing glutathione. Glutathione was that naturally goes and takes out toxins in your body and removes them out of your body. So at the time, we didn't even know that data. But, she was getting sick from mold, found high levels of Aspergillus penicillin in the area that we were at, and that was the reaction that she was having. Luckily enough, I had some great people fall into my lap. Dr. Dale Smith, Dr. McGath helped me through that. Got in touch with a guy named Walter Hayhurst. He got sick from mold exposure. Nobody in the country could get him better. So he went back to work, developed these own formulas that he had, and that's what we use to get Kenzie better. So I look at everything a little bit more detailed than everybody else or a lot of people from a mold inspection side. Because if you are not detailed at what you do, you are going to miss the reason why people are sick in the house. I hear it all the time, Jeff, I don't have mold in the house, but they're looking for the Dalmatian all over the wall, right? The big black hairy stuff growing all over the wall. And if it was that easy, you don't need somebody like me, right? You know where the problem is, and you just need help getting rid of it. But in these cases, I kind of look at everybody, doctor, as you're drowning in a toxic whiskey barrel. My job, I feel, is to come in, reduce that toxic load so your own body and your doctor can help get you better. So I need to puncture a big hole in the bottom of that barrel. So I'm looking for two different things inside your environment. One is what I call the elephants, just like it sounds. Anything that's going to produce mold spores or mycotoxins on a level that makes somebody sick. Secondly is what I call red flags in your environment, things that are a contributor to your toxic load that you may not realize. Plants, pets, front-end loading washing machines. There's a lot of little things in an environment that's a contributor to your toxic load, but not the reason why you're sick. But I feel I need to be detailed enough to show you all of those things so your body can get better faster. So at the end of the day, it's all about finding elephants for me and making sure that you either flee from those elephants or you find and correct those elephants correctly. And we'll talk about doing it correctly in a little bit.
Yeah. So when you look at mold visually, right, how often do you see mold visually on the wall, like the kind of Dalmatian analogy, versus it's there, but you can't see it? What percent of the time?
I would say at least 80% of the time you do not see it visually. There are all those cases that it's just obvious. It happened to me last week. We sit down at the table when I first go into the house and kind of go over your medical history, the history of the house. If you have questions for me, and one of my questions is, hey, what's your past water intrusions? Do you know of anything that's happened in the past? No, nothing's happened, Jeff. You walk down to the basement, water is standing visibly in the window well. It is gushing out the window well and into the basement. It is just one of those things that was just obvious, but they just never go down the basement, so they didn't know it. But most of the time, Justin, is hidden behind wall cavities. It is not easy to find. Crawl space is probably the number one reason why people get sick from mold exposure. So those of you out there that have a crawl space, when's the last time that you were actually physically in your crawl space to actually look at that? Or secondly, kind of like behind my wall here, Justin, is my master shower. Yep. So if I had seal issues in my tiles, in my grout, now water's getting all behind that water cavity, mold is growing all behind that cavity, but I don't see that with the naked eye. And a lot of times you'll miss that on an air test. If you do some air testing is looking for the mold spore. But mold makes you sick 3 different ways: the mold spore, the mycotoxins that it produces, and the MVOCs that it produces.
What's
So,
that last one? What's the
yeah,
MDOCs?
mold volatile organic compounds. So a lot of things let off VOCs or volatile organic compounds into the air, but I'm specifically looking for MVOCs, coming from mold. Kind of the best analogy I have for you. Do you ever smell that musty old basement smell? Most
Yes.
people know what that smells like. Well, that's an MVOC, and it's telling me that you have an active mold problem, or mold is actively feeding. That's why I'm smelling that odor into the air itself. But you have mold spores behind this wall. Well, mold works like a dandelion out in the yard. As soon as you kick it, blow it, disturb it, then it thinks it's going to die, throws its mold spores out to regenerate somewhere else. But being behind this wall, it's fat, happy, and content, not releasing mold spores into the air, but it is allowing mycotoxins or MVOCs to penetrate right through that sheetrock and communicate with my breathable air. So I always use kind of the green gas scenario. Imagine mold spores, mycotoxins, MVOCs as green gas. So now you can see it. Green gas just comes out of those wall cavities, communicates with your breathable air, and that's why you're getting sick. But you can't see that because that is on a microscopic level.
Okay, got it. So you have the VOCs, you have the mycotoxins, which are the off-gassing of the mold, and then you have the mold spores themselves. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then you have different kinds of molds. Some, not all molds produce mycotoxins, right? You have like the Aspergillus, Penicillium, black mold type of ones that produce mycotoxins. And then you have like the Cladosporium, Microsporium, Candida ones, which are more environmental or kind of like animal based from the outside in. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly right. And it all comes back to water intrusion, doctor. So you get a water intrusion that doesn't dry out within a week, mold can begin to grow. Then it gets exponential after that. So that first week, I call them the baby molds, right? Microsporium, Cladosporium.
Yes.
They can cause some upper lower respiratory issues, but I'm generally not as concerned about those. But that water intrusion stays a week or longer, then that's where Aspergillus penicillin starts to grow. Your toxic mold journey begins. You change moisture content 1% either way, a different toxic mold can show up. But then a water intrusion stays a month or longer. That's when you're seeing your Chaetonium and your Stachybotrys, the ones that produce the trichothecenes that can make you extremely sick. Those generally show up with water intrusion that's been there for a month or longer. So molds have a pecking order.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting. So what are the most common intrusions of water? Like, is it just roof? Is it a crack in the foundation? Is it a pipe bursting? Like, what are the most common vectors that water from a macro level comes from the outside in?
Yeah, I would say, number one reason why people get sick from mold is probably that dirt floor crawl space. Number two would probably be a master shower, water getting behind tiles. But everybody, no matter where you live, you have water pipes. And even in my own home, the last 3 years, I've had like 5 or 6 major water intrusions. One was a slab leak. One was a hot water tank filter leaking. A couple of them were pipes behind the walls that leaked. So it all comes back to a water intrusion, and everybody has water lines into their house. So one of those leaking and you don't know it, and it's a slow drip that's gone on for months and months and sometimes even years, then that becomes a problem. It is.
So how do you know, like, if it's a slow leak? Like, I have one of the devices by Moen called Flow, which is a great device because it's an auto shut off, which is excellent. And I can look at my app and in real time, I can see if there's any water movement in the house, which I like. And it does do shut offs. If I fill my pool up after 20 or 30 minutes of the water being on, it knows that that's different and it kills the water, which is wonderful. We had a pipe burst in my house last year and it went for like 16, 18 hours. It'd be nice to only have 30 minutes of damage versus 18 hours of damage. Any feedback on some of those devices, auto shut off devices?
Yeah, I love them. I wish everybody had one of the auto shut off features. It's very rare that I come across those. But even what I did on my own house, I bought water alert sensors.
Yes.
Mine, I think, are Govies, but there's a lot of different brands that are out there, and I don't care the brand. But put those underneath all your areas. So when I first got mine, underneath the sink, my vanities, behind my washing machine, underneath my master tub. The first week I got it, Justin, it goes off, and I'm actually angry. I think it was a couple of days after I got it. That piece of junk is going off, right? And I sit down, it's underneath my master tub. And my oldest daughter, she loves my master tub. It's huge. So she puts her feet up on the faucet, the spigot, and water was dumping down behind that spigot. And that was the reason why it was going off. I was like, oh, this thing is not a piece of junk at all. It really works. So and how often do I look underneath my master tub? How often do I look around my HVAC or my hot water heater? Extremely rare until there's a big problem. But if you can find that moisture intrusion and dry it out within 48 hours, you're not going to have a mold problem. So
Yeah,
those
no,
type sensors and shutoffs, I wish everybody had them.
I think they're great. I have them under my washing machine, my kitchen sink. I have them downstairs in the basement. I think it's great. Now, a couple of the things that I found is, okay, now you get frozen pipes. That's a big issue. I've had a couple of frozen pipes being burst in my life, and they're pain in the butt issue. What I do now is anytime it gets below 0 at night, I'm turning off the water, around 8, 9 o'clock at night. I'll use my mowing shut off and I drain the pipes. I just go to the lowest sink, turn it on for a couple minutes, let all the water out, and then I'll turn it back on in the morning. And then if I go to work or leave the house, I'll use the app, turn it off, drain the water again. I only do that those 3 to 5, you get that 1 week of really cold.
Right.
I'll do that then. What do you think about doing that as a preventative on those really cold days to prevent a frozen pipe?
Incredibly smart.
Yeah.
So anytime you can do something like that, Justin, you're gonna solve so many water intrusion, pipe leaks, things like that. So yeah, I wish everybody would do it.
And I think that's the best way, because I had a plumber say, "Oh, well, let the sink drip," right? So one day I let the sink drip, okay? And I come up to my sink, the sink's 80, 90% full of water. I go, "What the heck?" And so essentially what happened, the drip going down into the drain, it froze going into the drain. And then it froze, and then it backed up with the ice, and then the water accumulated on top of the ice. So you think the drip method works on those really cold days? It may not.
Yeah, and I had the same thing happen,
Yeah.
or the same thing, but I had mine dripping, and sure
Yeah.
enough, the pipe still froze.
Yeah.
So it can still happen. So if you can shut off the water,
Yeah.
probably a great idea.
Yeah. And then also I had a supply line going into my toilet freeze. Well, how do you drip that? What do? You don't, unless you can go under the hopper and put like a credit card on there and let it drain slowly. But it's like, what do you do? So now I'm just like, you know what? I'm using my app. I'm just killing the water as a preventative. I find that the burst pipes are the worst. And if you leave your house at all, just kill your water for the week if you leave your home. My God, I've seen people come back after a couple of weeks being in Florida or something, and the whole house is just destroyed with mold.
Yeah, and I always say you get what you inspect, not what you expect. So same applies here. Anytime I have a major frozen day or one of those type issues, I'll walk around my house. I'll check those areas, every single area of water pipes. I'm going to physically look and inspect, and I inspect my own house every year, just like I'm a client. Just go through it, because there's so many areas in my house that I just don't look at, and I know. And if I'm not looking at them, I know most people aren't.
Yeah, and then also just the hose on the outside of the hydrant on the outside. If you can't kill the water, you can't have a hose, because that'll be like a thumb over the straw. It'll just keep water in that line. I had a pipe burst that way. No one told me about that. As an adult, you need like that handbook of these are the things you got to do to take care of your home so you don't jack stuff up.
You're exactly right. Maybe one of these days I'll retire and write that book.
I know, that's a good one. All right, so we have the overt water coming in. We kind of talked about some preventative things. We talked about that. Is there anything else like common sense, like around windows? Do you recommend like caulking around windows? Is there something you recommend with insulation? Anything else on the preventative side people can look at to make their home safer for water intrusion?
Yeah, in windows is one of those big areas. I just wrote a report, a couple hours ago, and it is amazing how major those seal issues were around the windows. I mean, this is obvious, but they never go look outside of the windows. So generally it's your windows in your master shower or your shower areas.
Yep.
So those are the two areas from a seal issue standpoint that you can check yourself, because if you got to look at this, every 3 to 5 years, that silicone is breaking down, or that sealant over your grout is breaking down. The caulking is breaking down. So go outside your windows, do a quick walk around your house, see if you see any of those issues. I was doing that a couple of years ago, and wow, I got a brick crack. So you get what you inspect, not what you expect. Same there. Look in your shower. Take a flashlight, look in the corners. Look to see if there's any cracks, gaps. Mold is starting to get into your caulking. That's a good time to start replacing that. So every 3 to 5 years, that needs to be done.
Yeah, that's really good to look at. Anything else you recommend as on a preventative side?
There's a lot of things on preventative side, and here's kind of, I would say, the top 5-6 things that I wish everybody did, Justin. And we can dive into some of these details later. We're going to talk about seal balance. But number one is I do a treatment of my own house every year. It's a dry fog to treat the air, to clean the air. It's amazing how nasty your building envelope gets. So by treating that air, whether it's mold, Lysol, hairspray, bleach, ammonia, it all stays trapped into this building envelope. So I treat the air with the Haven Fog every year, no matter what. I use a maintenance protocol because my daughter does get sick from mold exposure. So once a month, I maintain that with the Haven Mist. I have strategically using air purifiers throughout the house. Austin Air is probably my favorite. IQ Air would be my number 2. Air Doctor would be my number 3. But any device that uses HEPA filtration and VOC or charcoal filtration, that's what I want in your house. Nothing that creates a chemical change. So I wish everybody had some type of air purification and used it strategically. What I mean strategic, you're spending 8 hours a day in your master bedroom. You better have one there.
How often do you change the Austin Air? I know that one's good for a couple of years, 4 or 5 years. How often do you change it?
Generally, it's about every 5 years. For me personally, I notice a different odor when it's time to change it.
It starts to get a little more fruity, right? Is that the kind of...
It can be a fruity smell. It can be kind of a soily smell. But anytime you smell something different around that unit, it's time to change those filters.
Okay. Is it worth going in there and kind of getting like a really good high quality vacuum and just vacuuming out the filter to just give it a little more life?
I've done that to mine several times. Yeah.
So that's good to do as well. Give it a little more life.
Because Justin, you minimize dust, you're going to minimize mold.
Yeah.
Mold and dust.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so we talked about the filters. You said before you like Austin Air, HealthMate Plus. Love that. You like the Air Doctor, the IQ Air. Those are your kind of big 3.
Yes.
On the air filter side. All right, we'll put links down below. That's awesome.
Yeah. Outside of that, I never recommend anymore. There's a lot on the market, but at the end of the day, I just don't want one that creates a chemical change. And I want one that has HEPA filtration and charcoal filtration. So if you find one of those, I'm happy with it.
That's good. Now, what about prevention on the basement side? So we got a basement. Obviously, we could talk about dehumidifiers down there to keep the moisture. What about a moisture barrier on the inside of the foundation as well as the outside of the foundation? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, and and every setup is different. I always said in my perfect house, I wish I had a basement. I enjoyed basements, but basements can be a huge trouble area if it's not done correctly. So in a perfect world, it's stopping moisture against the foundation, number 1. So a proper drainage system or proper negative sloping around the foundation. Number 2 is I would have what's called a spider drain system. And if you look at it, it is a perimeter drain that goes around the entire exterior of the basement. Then it has legs from all different directions coming to the center of the basement. So if you do have excess of moisture under the foundation, that's going into a drainage system as well. Then obviously waterproofing on the outside while it's being built and on the inside while it's being built. So I kind of hit it from every direction to minimize any moisture intrusion. And you hit it a minute ago with the dehumidifier. Moisture content, I want below 50%. So if that means you need to add a portable dehumidifier, one attached to your HVAC, you can buy cheap hygrometers, Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, just to check the humidity in the air, make sure that stays below 50%.
Okay, now that's great advice if you're going to be able to build your home from scratch. But now you get this basement, right? What's the easiest thing you can do? We can do a dehumidifier. Is it worth doing some dry lock or a moisture barrier on the inner part of the concrete foundation inside the basement? Is that a good option?
It is a good option if you don't have a finished basement. And you got to realize most of these houses that I go into, the basement's already finished.
So the basement's finished. Is there anything you'd recommend outside of just a dehumidifier and a really good air filter besides that?
Yeah, dehumidifier, good air purification, but probably most importantly, no water can stand against that foundation. That's generally the biggest issue that I come across. Negative sloping, a lot of vegetation, vines and ivies growing up the side of the house, window wells that don't have dome covers over them and water's getting to those window wells. It's all about moisture. So let's stop moisture against the foundation that won't come in the basement unless it's coming from the ground up.
So so you recommend having a good sump pump put around the foundation just to make sure any water that's up against it gets pumped away?
I don't use a sump pump, but trench drain, French drain, and make sure that it goes a minimum 18 inches away from that foundation. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we have 2 sump pumps, which any water that accumulates, you hear it go on when it rains and stuff. You hear it, any water that comes up around the foundation, it pumps it out. And then we put artesian drains or French drains in to kind of just redirect the water away from the foundation.
Now, in one note to mention there, if you do have a sump pump in the basement itself, make sure that sump pump is sealed from the breathable air. So imagine the green gas all in, because there's standing water in there all the time. So seal it up, make sure there's no air communication from that pit to the breathable air.
Yep, that makes sense. That's really good. Anything else? Because I find a lot of people, they just have high moisture in their basement. Like when I didn't have my dehumidifier, I found it would be 15% higher humidity in my basement just compared to my first and second floors. It'd be 15, maybe even 20% difference. Now I keep my basement, I have it at 40%, which is the lowest I can set for April air. And it will mostly keep it around 46 to 47. With it being at 40. So it's just always pulling out that moisture all the time. And that's a game changer regarding just the odor and the scent. What's your take on that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is amazing how many basements that I go into that as soon as you walk down there, oh, Jeff, it just smells like a basement. Basements should smell like the rest of the house.
Should. Yeah, it's
So
humidity.
if it smells like a basement, there's a problem. So in generally, that's exactly what you find is the humidity, starts getting to 60, 65%. Aspergillus penicillin is just thriving off the excess of moisture and dust in the air. And a lot of times you don't even see it visually. There's no colonization of mold. It's just malodor because so much moisture content and mold's thriving off the dust, and it hadn't colonized all over your stuff yet.
That's great. And so, all right, so easy out of the gate, we can do some kind of drainage around the house, some kind of a pump, maybe to pump the water away, or at least drainage to kind of move the water away, right? That's an easy one.
Exactly right.
Okay. And then at what point would you put a pump in, some kind of a pump to move the water away? Does that come in at all?
It doesn't unless I have groundwater coming up. So if I've done my due diligence on keeping moisture away from the foundation, water's not coming down the side of my walls. Now, if I can't, in your case, and I'm not for sure about your case, Justin, but I need that water to drain far enough away from the house that it's not going to keep that excess of moisture against the concrete, and that concrete will wick up that moisture and cause a problem in your basement. So if I need it to be pumped out further away from the house, I would get a sump pump. In most cases that I find, it's just getting good trench or French drain system and just extend it out far enough away from the house.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. And everyone should just have their when they're building now, they should just waterproof everyone's foundation. I just don't know why. Obviously, it's money, right? It's cost, but it doesn't seem like a hard thing to do when you're building, when you're putting the foundation, and you could probably just spray it on with a sprayer and just roll it out, and it'd be easy. Wouldn't be a hard job to do it all.
A lot of this is the problem that we're using these building materials that we're using, Justin. So why underneath your kitchen sink is there sheetrock? Why behind your washer is there sheetrock and not HardieBacker board, concrete board like is in your master shower? Because you know sometime in the next 20 years, you're going to have a leak underneath your sink, right?
Right.
And when you do, what do I have underneath there? Compressed particle board as a platform underneath the sink, which is just a Twinkie for mold. Then I've got the sheetrock on the back wall. So if I'm putting in areas or items that are not a mold source, I'm going to minimize any problems that I'm going to have. It's kind of like having carpet in your basement. I don't like carpet anyway. The data on carpet is if you go to change out your carpet, it weighs 8 times more than what it did when you put it in. I mean, that's mold data, right? It's just nasty.
That is gross.
If you have a basement, there's going to be excess of moisture in your basement at some time in the next 20 years. I almost guarantee it. So
what I've learned just through observation, right? I have professional grade vinyl in my basement here. It's waterproof, water resistant. But if I could go back, what I would do is I would have just the epoxy kind of laid down, right?
Concrete.
Yeah, just the epoxy floor. That's really nice. You can make it look nice. And then it's water resistant. So if you ever get a leak, you'll never have to rip it out. And then having a leak once, right? We had it over here, and the water just transitioned all the way across the home to find the nearest drain. I'd have a drain in every corner of the house. So when that water comes here, it doesn't move through everything and get everything wet. So if you just have one drain on each corner, you have a leak or whatever, it keeps the mess a little bit more localized.
I agree. No, that's
great. And I would think, probably a drain under your kitchen sink too would be a smart idea.
Right.
Just something simple like that, or behind your washing machine would be a drain too, would be good too.
Yeah, Jeff, I can't afford a drain. Well, everybody, Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart sells those little cupped, little plastic liner things that you can put underneath there. So if you do have a slow drip, you're just going to fill up into that.
That's
lining.
it.
And
you
if
get
you
the
have
little liner.
Sensor, you got a leak.
You can at least put like a little liner in there and then put the leak guard in, the leak alarm. But I'm just speaking to like more like, all right, from like you talking about construction practices, you think some of these construction practices would kind of trickle downstream with just basic like code requirements. But I guess it increases the cost and people are just trying to pinch pennies.
Yeah, it's all about money on building the house.
But you talk to any insurance person, they'll tell you like the biggest cost really comes with all these leaks, these leak damages, probably even more than fire or anything else, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. All right, cool. So anything else you wanted to, so we talked about the humidity aspect. That's a big one. What about the crawl space? I think I talked to JW and he said like with a crawl space, you either want to seal it up and make it perfectly airtight, or you want to make it like a wind funnel and have great, perfect ventilation. What's your take on that?
Yeah, my favorite is to have it completely airtight to where the soil cannot communicate with the air above it ever again.
Ever again.
Yeah, and how I look at that, because imagine throwing a blanket out in the yard tonight, then picking it up tomorrow morning. What's underneath that? It's moisture, right? It's a vapor barrier. So you have a vapor barrier down, or if you don't have a vapor barrier, which you should, now you have rainwater, water sitting against the foundation, or a pipe leak. That soil gets wet, mold, virus, bacteria, yeast all grow into that soil, and you have this basically a toxic pit underneath your house. So it's soil contamination. So getting a non-permeable vapor barrier, that's a thick vapor barrier that goes over that soil, so you don't get a rip, hole, puncture, tear into that liner, that vapor barrier. Then have it come up the sides of the foundation, attached to the foundation, so it completely seals it off from the rest of the house. So basically,
you would also put a dehumidifier down there too, as well.
So I've traveled the nation doing this. Some areas the answer is yes, but if in some areas no, you don't need it. But how do I know that?
That's so dry. You mean?
Yeah, exactly right. So I'm checking the humidity content down there, and if I have a humidity issue, then I can add a dehumidifier. And this is very debatable. A lot of people try to shut up a crawl space, so I'm not getting the humid air from outside and not getting that airflow because it's humid outside, Jeff. I'm allowing all this moisture. So it's highly debatable, but in my opinion, I would have vent it. And if I need to add a dehumidifier, I can to keep that moisture under control.
What else? What other common situations are you seeing? We talked about the humidity aspect. We talked about the basement. How do you know if you're having an issue if you have a slab and you don't have a basement? How do you see that?
Generally, you don't, unless you have something like an infrared camera. Or my perfect case, I was going to do the laundry and I don't have any shoes or socks on. And I go into my washer, around my washer, and my floor is hot. Oops. And immediately I know I've got a hot water line that's got a leak in it under that slab. If it was a cold water line, I wouldn't know that until my grout on my tile started getting discolored. Then I'd look at it under infrared camera and I can kind of pinpoint where that leak is coming from. But in my case, yeah, it's knowing your house. It's walking around your house. You get what you inspect, not what you expect. So I think.
How do you treat that? How do you even treat that? Do you go and just waterproof the side of your foundation after that? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, if it's a slab leak like I had, it's that tile comes up and all those damaged materials underneath that tile had to be replaced. But generally, it's stopping the moisture at the end of the day. And if you have a slab leak, Justin, there's nothing you can do to stop the slab leak. It's just going to happen. You have to catch it as soon as you can. Like yours, if you have the water shutoff system, it's automatically going to shut off that water. And now you got to go figure out where it's leaking at, right? So bringing in a plumber or a guy that has an infrared camera or sonar, there's a couple different methods to find that. But it's finding where that leak's at and stopping it as soon as possible. You can't stop it within 48 hours. Just know you're going to have to remove and replace some damaged materials, and you're going to need to treat the air afterwards.
Okay, very good. And then what about on the testing side? We talked like kind of pre-show, using some of the auger plates to kind of detect what's in the air. Is that kind of still your favorite baseline method? I know we talked about some of the ERMI and the more expensive methods. Which methods do you like the best that's more practical and cost effective?
Yeah, so here's my quick overview, then I'll kind of rate them for you. Every way of testing has its flaws, right? So they have their good and their bad with every way of testing. Generally, I love testing for two different reasons. Do I need somebody like Jeff to come out, look at my property from a mold standpoint of view and do a mold inspection? Yes or no? And it doesn't always answer that question. But there's a reason why generally I'm at somebody's house, and there's a reason why you're getting air testing. So if something does show up low or there's not a problem, you may want to look at a different methodology. Because let's look at auger plates. I love those. They're probably my favorite for the average person because it's the best bang for the buck. They're extremely cheap. They're $3 a plate if you buy the mold plate. If you have them analyzed, total fee is probably $35 for each room that you do. I do it professionally for you. It's $75 a sample that I take. So it's a lot more expensive, and that's generally on the low end. It's up to about $125 a sample in some different areas. So it's relatively cheap and easy to do, and it gives a lot of information. It also picks up yeast where other methodologies aren't going to pick up the yeast. And as you know, from a medical standpoint of view, yeast is causing a lot of problems in my medically sensitive patients.
And where's that yeast coming from? Is it mainly pets, or could it be off-gassing from someone that even has candida or yeast overgrowth in their body? How does that happen?
Generally, I say the number one reason is person or pet. And generally why I see that, it's a mold side effect. I get mold exposure, it gets into your system, throws your gut out of whack, candida starts to overgrow. So thrush coming out of the back of your mouth, literally candida falling off of your skin. So generally it's person or pet, but it can be from other sources too. I just happen to have a great nose. So a lot of times when I go into a basement and your insulation's wet, I smell what I call the sweet banana smell, which is more of a yeast type smell to me. And it is because there's candida, rhodotorilla, nocardia, a yeast family mold that's actually growing behind the insulation because it's all wet. So it's not always person or pet, but it's kind of a red flag that's the issue.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then, so what if you don't send it to the lab? Obviously, the lab will tell you what the yeast or what the mold is, and if there's mycotoxins, you can kind of assess that, and they give you a number rating based on the spores. If, let's say, you just did the cheap Home Depot one and you just kept it open for an hour or two, closed it up for a week, and then can you just count the spores and just see, okay, I'm under 5, I'm probably okay? Is that a good, decent method to look at?
Yeah, the methodology behind that on a medical scale is 0 to 4 colonies is normal, 5 to 8 is elevated, 9 and above is definitely going to be an issue for medically sensitive patients. So this part of it's not rocket science. So follow the instructions from immunolytics, set out that plate for an hour, look at it after 4 days. It's incubated in there. It's not having babies upon babies yet. So after 4 days, I'm going to look at that mold plate. The size of the mold does not matter. It can be the size of a pinhead. It can take up half the plate. But I'm going to look at and count all the dots.
Just the dots.
Yeah, exactly right. That's normal. So for $3, I kind of got a snapshot of that room. And if I was smart and did every room in my house, now I've got 3 areas that have quite a bit in them. Okay, I'm going to spend the extra money, send those off to the lab, have it analyzed. So it's a good methodology, best bang for the buck.
And if you see an elevation there and there's no over water leak, right? You count it, use only maybe 4 or 5 or 6 little pinheads. Is it just, hey, let's get some air filtration. Let's make sure the humidity is good. Let's maybe use the Haven fog solution. Or do you ever say, let's start putting cameras behind walls? Like how far do you dig when you start to see some problems?
Yeah. So generally, everything's showing up low. Hey, let's do some maintenance and preventative things to clean the air. If I'm looking at from a medical standpoint of view, you got extremely high mycotoxin levels, you're extremely ill, whatever the case may be, hey, mold testing isn't finding your source, whatever methodology that I used, let's get an inspector in there and let's find sources. Because at the end of the day, I think that's the biggest thing. So quickly hitting on these other methodologies, air testing, indoor to outdoor air comparison, I do it a lot. I'm a lot more scrutinized when I look at that data, but there's a lot of data I can extrapolate there. So it's catching viable and non-viable molds. I look at ERMI. I think ERMI is the most expensive for the least amount of data that I can extrapolate from it. Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge fan of ERMI, but can I get data from it? Yeah. It does a better job of picking up Stachybotrys and Chaetonium than any other methodology. So if money's not an option, Justin, I'm going to tell you, hey, let's do auger plates, let's do air testing, let's do ERMI, let's do all these methodologies. The problem is that becomes expensive. So
who do you like for air testing, by the way?
What do I like?
Who do you like? What company for air testing?
If I'm doing it, so I think, and I see data from other companies 24/7. So all the time I'm looking at other people's information too. Immunolytics is who I personally use
because for air testing too. Or they use the auger though, right? They use the auger test of the plates.
They'll do that too. So they
Oh,
do
they do both.
But when I do air samples, and sorry I don't have one in front of me, but I do it professionally. I'm doing 15 liters for 5 minutes in my machines. I send that off to the lab, and they do it as well. So kind of perfect example is I see all these lab tests from other labs coming back, and when I'm looking specifically at Aspergillus penicillin, there's only like 200 counts per meters cubed outside. I've done enough of this on average, at least where I'm sitting at it, it's probably 2,000 counts per meters cubed. So I don't think a lot of companies do a great job at being able to break those down. So that's why I use immunolytics. But not only do the SDA auger plates, they can do swabs professionally and for the do-it-yourselfer tape lifts. There's some other methodologies. And I always say, if you're doing it yourself and you see something that you suspect is mold, don't do an air sample. Don't do an auger plate. Do a swab. It's kind of like a Q-tip, right?
Yeah.
You want something visibly to transfer from that swab. I want to see it on there. Then I'm going to send it to the lab. If
That
I
makes
can't
sense.
see it on that swab, I'm probably wasting my money. It didn't transfer.
Okay, that's great. Well, I'll put some links down below with some of the products and some of the things we referenced. We're also going to talk in a minute here about just kind of the natural ways that you like to treat it with the Haven Essential Oil Fog Solution, which is a great option, especially when you compare to kind of the conventional options. So we'll put air filters and some of the different dehumidifier products down below. So we have the Haven Fog Solution, which is you can put it in a dry fogger, which gets it to really small micron sizes, under 10 microns?
Yeah, it's under 10 microns, and it's hard to get specific on that because I've tried. But the answer is it's under 10. And kind of how I view that as a methodology, because you look at our Haven Mist or any other product that is water-based, which most products are. So imagine spraying a water bottle or Windex into the air. Falls out of the air extremely quickly, right? Now, the micron size is a little bit bigger, but imagine mold spores as golf balls. So now I can see those. When I spray that mist into the air, I can get some of those golf balls out of the air. But if you look at a dry fog, its suspension rate is 30 minutes to 2 hours. Depends on and humidity. So it looks like dry fog. It stays in the air. It looks like Halloween. And it captures all those particles and brings them back down out of the air. So a lot more efficient, more powerful too than anything else. But the effectiveness rate of getting that stuff back out of the air.
And so it would knock it down, but it would also denature it, right? Due to the antimicrobial aspect of the oils too.
Exactly right. And when we look at fogging, it's a two-step program for me. Because I'm very detailed, right? I think by dry fogging, you're probably solving 90% of your problem, right?
Yeah.
Getting all that stuff back out of the air because that's what you're breathing in. But after you do a dry fog, I even want to wipe down my surfaces, especially my horizontal surfaces where all that dead mold spore can still produce mycotoxins. So, hey, let's do at least a good general cleaning of all my horizontal surfaces to start over with new dust, get rid of all those dead mold spores. Now, can you do a small particulate clean, wipe your walls and everything else? Certainly. But the big thing is get that stuff out of the air, combination that with getting rid of any dead mold spores that are still left around.
And what do you like for a cleaner? Would you just use can you use some white vinegar, apple cider vinegar? Can you do a citrus cleaner?
You can. Here's the strategy at the end of the day. I'm not trying to kill anything at that point. So microfiber cloth and warm soap Dawn on a rag. There's Haven Mist, Haven wipes.
Okay, good.
That you can use as well. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is just get it out. I'm not trying to kill anything at that point.
And then you're also, with some of the essential oil things, you're not creating all these secondary metabolites that you may get with concrobium or some of these other compounds. Can you kind of compare and contrast the conventional approach to treat it on the fog side versus kind of yours?
Yeah, and it's kind of the version of your air purifier smelling a chemical outgassing afterwards or not. So whether it's biocides, germicides, fungicides, ozone in high doses, if I'm using a product that one smells extremely toxic, more than likely it is, right? And a lot of my patients are going to have a chemical reaction to that chemical. Some of those products have a 7 to 10 year half-life. That means that chemicals that have strength in your house for the next 7 to 10 years. So I try to stay away from the chemical aspect as much as I possibly can. So when I'm treating some of wood items that we talked about earlier, you have visible mold growth on wood that's not wet rot, dry rot. I just want to treat it. So I treat it with 12% hydrogen peroxide, which is going to be safe. Doesn't have that chemical outgassing. then I'm going to use a no VOC sealant over that to encapsulate and treat that wood afterwards as well. So it's all about not using a chemical-based product. That's why we use the Haven Fog. So GSE based, grapefruit seed extract, lemon lime tangerine extracts. So we want to use a product that's not going to cause a secondary reaction. Back to the old motto, do no harm, right?
Right. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That's great. And so typically if you saw mold on wood and you hit it with some compounds and you kind of knocked it down, do you have to encapsulate it every single time like that?
I would always, because if you look at the kind of the dead mold spore, and that's why we wipe down afterwards. So a lot of times mold hyphae can even extend into wood another, 6 inches without you seeing it with the naked eye. So it is always a good practice after you treat something, always seal it with a no VOC sealant. Yeah, I would.
Very good. Got it. And then fogging as well. And then so topically you would do like the hydrogen peroxide on there. And then you would also do the sealer on there too, the low VOC.
Yeah, it's not rocket science. You're using hydrogen peroxide. It's just at a higher percent so you don't get it on you. But if it bubbles up like a cut on your skin, everybody knows that analogy.
Yeah.
Pour hydrogen peroxide on a cut, it bubbles up. Same principle with hydrogen peroxide when you're treating wood. It bubbles up like a cut on your skin, then I would let it dry. I would do it again. Then once it dries after that, then put a sealant over it.
That makes sense. That's really good. And is that conventional protocol by people that do restoration work?
Some of it, yes. Usually it's not straight hydrogen peroxide. Usually they'll use a surfactant or other chemicals that's in it. I'll use, I think you use concrobium as the analogy a minute ago. So more of a chemical-based product and not a non-chemical based product. That's why I like the 12% hydrogen peroxide.
Yeah. What's the other one that's olive leaf based? It's a common one. It's a liquid one, a purple bottle ish. I forget what it is.
And I think it's not tea tree oil. So tea tree oil is another one that's good. But those products that you're talking about, that is an ingredient in it, but they also have other chemicals into it that I'm going to have a problem with.
Because of the secondary metabolites.
Exactly right. And again, to me, it's very obvious when I'm smelling that chemical or whatever was used on it, and it has a very strong outgassing odor, it's going to be a problem for medically sensitive patients.
That makes sense. Well, good. We're going to have you back. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the treatment options. We're going to put links down below to some of the products that we talked about on the Haven Fog solution. Also, Jeff, how do people get a hold of you if they want to schedule like a virtual kind of inspection on the mold side? What's the best way to connect with you?
You bet. Airwellnow.com. On that website, there's links, biobalancenow.com. My number's on those links. But if you have a pen and paper, it's good old-fashioned 580-574-1373. That number will always get you to me. If you've got one of these other numbers, it will eventually get it back to me as well. But that's probably the easiest way to set up for questions, virtual inspections, regular inspections, or just anything that I can do to help.
Great. Can you repeat the number one more time, Jeff?
Yeah, 580-574-1373.
Good. We'll put Jeff's contact in the description link below. Awesome, Jeff. Thank you so much. Appreciate this. This is excellent. This is going to help a lot of people. We'll send it out to all my patients that have, some of these issues. Some of the stuff on the crawl space and some of the foundation stuff, I think was just incredibly valuable. And just having the moisture detectors under some of those big areas, I think is super important as well.
You bet. Happy to be able to help.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jeff.
You bet. Have a great day.
You too.